Hi, everybody. Welcome to AFTERBUZZ TV Spotlight On. Today's episode, we're talking to Tony Cavalero about Groundlings, School of Rock, and why wearing spandex is so cool. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Yeah, look at that.
There he is, man.
That is the theme song for Nickelodeon's new show, School of Rock. Welcome, everybody, to AFTERBUZZ TV Spotlight On, the show that lets you get up close and personal with some of your favorite people in the entertainment business. I'm your host, Frank Moran. You can follow me here on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. My guest today is an actor, he's a comedian, he's a writer, he's even a producer. He's what you basically call a quadruple threat. You've seen him on shows like Two Broke Girls, New Girl, Modern Family, Heart of Dixie, many more. And when he's not busy entertaining you on the screen, he's entertaining you live over at the Groundlings as a member of their main stage company there. Look at that. Look at that. Awesome. His latest project, he's playing Dewey Finn on Nickelodeon's School of Rock, based on the film of the same name. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause for Tony Cavalero. Yeah.
We're here, dude. Oh,
we did
man.
it. We made it.
Gosh, the whole audience is going crazy. There's no audience, guys.
Look at that.
Yeah, there's no.
But it sounds impressive. It sounds so impressive.
Oh, man.
Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, dude. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, it was my pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
I built this set for you.
When you gave birth to me.
Yes, it was my pleasure. Yes, thank you.
I usually only make my wife call me a quadruple threat. So I really appreciate you bringing that to the audiences, to the masses.
That's right. Look at that.
You know?
Yes. Well, so in this hour, we're just going to get all up and close and personal with you, Tony.
Dope.
That's right. We're going to put that spotlight on you. There's not going to be any secrets hidden from the audience by the end of this.
Good, man. Good. I gotta get it. I gotta get those skeletons out.
And this is
dog.
the perfect place to do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's go right all the way to the beginning.
Okay.
Let's say that. Where were you born and where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Fairfax, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and I lived there all the way through college. I mean, well, obviously I didn't live there during college, but I grew up there right outside the D.C. area. In Annandale, Virginia, to get even more specific.
I've only been to D.C. a few times, but I love that city because it's just so cool.
It's a great city, dude. It's awesome. And so, like, you know, I grew up, I did the Boy Scouts and martial arts, all kinds of, I mean, we can go off on so many tangents, dude. You know, I was a Civil War reenactor for a while. I mean, you just pick a topic at any point, dude, and we will go.
All right. Well, first, you don't drop something like Civil War reenactor without, we have to take at least a moment to talk about that. When did you do that?
So, it's actually a bit of an origin story for Dewey Finn, actually. So I was obsessed with history, and I also had this thing for acting. Like, I liked the idea of performing, you know, and I think it was in like 6th or 7th grade, I met a buddy who was doing like this Civil War reenacting. So, and he was a drummer boy in this Civil War regiment. So I was like, oh my gosh, my love of history and my love to perform and be seen gets to be combined. So like, I bought all the clothes, all the traditional like wool wear, and I joined the 28th Massachusetts Regiment, which was based out of Northern Virginia there.
Do they have like an audition process, or they just take anybody that wants to be part of it?
Anybody that wants to do it and can purchase the uniform, you know, can go out. And so then I started drum lessons. I started music lessons to learn how to play the snare drum. And that's kind of how I first got my intro to music, was doing these lessons with this older gentleman who actually built the drums that we would play these. I mean, and they were like exact replicas of the Civil War drums. And literally anyone that's listening to this right now is asleep. Asleep.
I'm always getting interested, like, because for the Civil War reenactments, like, how would you do it once a week?
Yeah, I mean, if I would do it as much as I possibly could, but it was always a little weird because my parents were like reenactors, so it would be like, I've got to go with these weird older gentlemen out to the woods for the weekend, you know? And it would always be like my mom or dad would like have to come. So it was kind of few and far between. It wasn't, because I was also a scout, but my dad was like an assistant scoutmaster and my mom was like a den mother. So they would always be on the trips. So the Civil War reenacting, we would do like a lot of parades. So we would do like a parade down Old Town Alexandria, you know, in Northern Virginia there. Or we would do like, I I remember I did like Antietam one year, and that was a big one because I think it was like 135th anniversary or something like that. And then we did this one at Gettysburg this one year. I think it was the same thing, 135th anniversary. And I think there was something like 6,000 troops short of the actual numbers from the Battle of Gettysburg for the actual Pickett's charge. And I remember like hearing all the replica cannons go off, you know, which was crazy, dude. I mean, there were like, must have been like 100 replica cannons there. And then just these masses of dorky history buffs that would go out and shoot blanks at each other. I mean, the idea of it is crazy. I mean, I get being obsessed with history, but it's also you get this idea, you get this chance to like perform. You know, I think there's definitely something to that as well. You know,
so is it basically when you're going to reenact a battle or something like
Yep.
that? Do they talk to you ahead of time? Like, this is how everybody moved. This formation moved this way. This formation moved this way.
yeah, that's all like, you know, because we would have like captains of our regiments and colonels and whatever else. I mean, they would have this line of leadership. What was it? Line of command or whatever. I can't remember what it's called. I went to military college. And I don't know what's something of command, channel of command,
Chain of command.
chain of command. Boom. So they would have a whole chain of command. Great, dude. Of course you would get it. Woo. Did you just salute with your left hand?
Oh no!
Oh man, yep, chop it off. That's what they would have done too. So they would have this whole chain of command, and there were guys that would like literally be. There was a guy that was like his specialty was being General Longstreet.
Oh man!
And there was a guy that was like a professional General Robert E. Lee, and like a General Pickett, and like all these Hooker, all these Meade, all these generals. And they would have these guys that were like professional at playing certain people. And then obviously they would, you know, the chain of command would go down and you would end up being where you were supposed to be and as close to the real place as your regiment was on the actual event.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then would they tell you if you were going to get shot or not?
No, you kind of would pick and choose, you know, as you went along. But it was always fun to be like, dude, I'm going to die first. And then like you could like try and save me and then you die. You know, I mean, it was like getting to play make-em-ups, you know, it was like the first kind of like improv I got to experience, you know?
Now, were those people that like, I would, thinking about it, I always kind of equated to like a Renaissance fair. Were those people that just like dial in and they are that character?
Oh, for sure.
From beginning to end. And you don't see them break.
100%. All the way down to your skivvies, man. They linen, long underwear. I mean, talk about uncomfortable. July in Pennsylvania reenacting Gettysburg.
But you'd have good crowds watching you, right?
Yeah. I mean, people would come from all over the place to watch these things.
And then what happens at the end of it? So you finish like the battle, whatever happens. Do you all like get up and take a bow to everybody? Or do you all kind of like, well, I guess that we're done.
That's
and then you
it.
just walk off?
It's so weird. You get up, you walk off back to your campsite, and then all the older guys get wasted on like homemade, you know, authentic Civil War, you know, booze.
As your mom shepherds you away. Like, no,
Yes,
honey, okay.
she's
no,
like,
no,
yeah,
no.
yeah, hop in the station wagon.
We got to get away
We
from
got to
this.
go back home. But that was like my first like line into like improv, and then it got, also I was like obsessed with history. That's what I ended up majoring in college, at a place that was very famous for Civil War stuff as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, at the Virginia Military Institute.
So now, at any time, since you're so close to DC, you got a
Yeah.
passion for history. Did you ever have any political aspirations? Or are you like, no, it's always acting was always your thing, or improv?
No political aspirations. I mean, we'd mainly go into the city and we got to do all the cool museums, man. I mean, that's the thing that, I mean, I'm so lucky. And like a lot of people are like, oh, when you were a kid, didn't you hate the museums? And I was like, no, I always kind of was fascinated. My parents always kind of brought this fascination with museums. My dad loved history too. But for me, I was a chubby kid, so I was always kind of funny. My parents were always the funniest parents in the room, always. They had both been like actors in high school and college. And that kind of transferred to me and my brother. But when you grow up in a place like Northern Virginia, the idea of acting, like, it's not a real thing. Nobody really does that. I mean, Mark Hamill did it, you know, but that's like one in a million. Nobody really does that, you know, which is a funny story because my dad's like favorite story to tell was, you know, in high school, at our high school, my brother, my mom, and my dad, we all went to the same high school. Mark Hamill was my dad's understudy in Camelot in the high school play. And so Mark Hamill went off and did Star Wars, and my dad owned a construction company for years. So like that was always, I think my dad tried to like prove himself. And, so for me, like, I was like, well, I feel like I'd be a really good soldier, because I did like football and wrestling and lacrosse in high school, and I was like a big jock. But I also like took the theater classes, and I loved doing that. I loved making people laugh. I remember we did like Cyrano de Bergerac as an in-school play. And oh my gosh, dude, I had so much fun, like just making people laugh. And in 8th grade, I remember I auditioned for a play just because this girl I had a crush on was auditioning for it, and I got the lead in the play. And then she dropped out, and we ended up going to like the Virginia National like middle school play festival, and I won like best comedic actor, and we won like best comedic play. It was like, oh man, this is so much fun, but then once I got into high school, and it was kind of like, well, that's not anything anybody really does, and especially if they're like a jock, and doing sports and stuff like that, I couldn't do any of the after school plays. So for me, I always wanted to play Division I lacrosse. And also my senior year was 9/11, so to go to VMI, I was kind of like, this is great. I get to do lacrosse, and then I can go and kill bad guys afterwards, but you also have the option of going into the civilian world from VMI, which is great. And it had the the history link that I always wanted. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up at VMI, with that kind of traditional idea of like, well, I'll go into the military, be an officer for a while, or even from there they have like the highest alumni hire rate in the country or something. It's something like 97% of people that graduate from there either commission in the military, have a civilian job, or go on to do their master's degree or doctorate.
Man, now given with your parents, because you're doing acting growing up, when you're saying like, maybe I want to major in history, you go to VMI, do that. Were they like, yeah, absolutely? Or they're like, well, we know you love acting. Do you want to try that at all?
No, they both knew how much fun I had being funny. And I think like my mom especially, but you go to college. You go to college, you don't move to California. You know what I mean? And so I think it's that idea of, you go to college and then you kind of figure it out, And so like for me, both of them were very happy I got into VMI. They were happy if I were happy. I think my mom would have loved it if I had gone to friggin' hairdressing school. She's hilarious. That's the thing. She's like, why don't you leave military college and come do, the beauty school here in Northern Virginia? Like I said, she's hilarious. and but once I got to VMI, like, I had to act like a soldier. I feel like that was like the best acting training I got, because, I had to act like a soldier for 4 years, because you get out of line there, man, and trouble just causes more trouble. Once you get in trouble for one thing, it just adds up so fast. You get demerits for something, and then automatically you got a microscope on you. And so I did really well there, and was like captain of the lacrosse team, got good grades, the whole nine. But they didn't really have too much for theater or acting or anything like that. And some of my favorite times are watching comedic movies with my buddies in our room, And the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I'd always wanted to go to California. Like even during the summers when we would go on break from military college, I'd like bleach my hair. I got like earrings. You know what I mean? Like I was like such a rebel. And obviously I should have like taken the hint, like, dude, really? You're probably not going to commission into the military. And so we vacationed to Los Angeles. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and her best friend was an actress. And while we were out here, we went to this party, and I met an actor that like I knew. And he was really nice and seemed like a normal guy. And I was like, man, I wonder if I took like that discipline and hard work I've learned at VMI and try and put that towards acting, if that could be an actual like thing. Because California, you come here and the weather's like,
it's fantastic.
I mean, you're blown away. And then the palm trees, and it was just amazing, And so that junior year, I started kind of getting the wheels turning of like, man, maybe I want to move to California. And then we vacationed again the next year, and I was like, I'm going to move to California.
So when you tell your parents this, are they like, Oh, man.
Dude, it was the perfect storm. They were getting divorced my senior year in college. And so both of them didn't really have a leg to stand on. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, okay, well, we're doing our own thing, so go for it. If that's what you really want to do, we'll totally support you. And like I said, both of them had been actors, and I think, you know, this was kind of a dream that maybe both of them had at one time, and they were like, well, great, go for it. If you want to go for it, you know, you've got a great degree under your belt to fall back on. You know, you can always commission in the military 3 years down the road if you hate it. You know, you can go get your master's degree. You can take the GRE, which I had taken. Originally, I was going to try and get I'd taken and done great on the GREs, and I was going to try and go and find like a theater history major somewhere where I could get a master's in theater history, but I couldn't find anything great out here. Mm-hmm. But sure enough, I graduated. Our graduation speaker was Donald Rumsfeld.
Oh.
And, right?
All right.
Oh, man. And it's just so funny, like the world I live in now, and like, you know, yoga, and I meditate, and, you know, acting and long hair, and like, gosh, Donald Rumsfeld, and I was shaved head and military gung-ho, you know. But I worked at lacrosse camp that whole summer, and then I packed up my car and I moved out.
So when you're telling all your friends at VMI, like, you know,
Yeah.
hey, after graduation, I'm heading west.
Yeah.
I'm going to California. Are they all like, yeah? Or they're like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. They're all like, yeah, that's where you're supposed to be, dude.
Yeah.
Like anyone that really knew me, that's like, yeah, he's really funny. He's, you know, all my buddies, they're so sweet. All my VMI buddies are like, we knew it.
Oh, that's
we
awesome.
knew that, you know, you're too funny not to use that for something, you know, which is really sweet.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few that have just been so supportive all the way through, man, you know.
Oh, that's so cool. When you have
Yeah.
people in your corner backing you like that, what a great feeling that is.
Especially when you're like a janitor for the first 4 years you live in Los Angeles.
Oh, man. All right, so you come in Los Angeles. Where do you kind of set up base camp when you first get here?
So I didn't know anything, dude. I didn't know anyone out here. I literally had no connections. But I thought, well, if I'm going to be an actor, I should get another degree in acting. So I did 6 months at Cal State Los Angeles studying theater arts and dance. And I did some plays there. I took a bunch of intensives there. And then I loved it. The people were great. And that's kind of how I got my first base of friends. And my buddy Tony, he let me come crash at his place on like Sunset in Normandy and like Little Armenia. And that's where we lived in a studio apartment in bunk beds.
Bunk bed, that's
Yeah.
great.
And so while I was studying there was I was a prop master for an actual play in North Hollywood, just right down the street at the El Portal Theater.
Oh, cool.
And I did props for Nuncrackers, starring Sally Struthers.
No, oh,
Yes.
that's awesome.
And this was like December of 2006 or 2007. I think it was 2006. And while I was working there, the two managers at the theater were like, oh, this guy's a really hard worker. And a position opened up for like not a stage manager, but like a front of house manager, assistant. And they hired me on, but that was like required cleaning. For the majority of the work was cleaning 3 to 4 days a week. So I would come in and clean for 3-4 hours. And it was a great rate, you know, but I was literally like picking up homeless person feces on the side of the road and like outside the theater and going to school. And then to also supplement, I was doing extra work on the side. And I met a friend doing extra work on that show Life. Do you remember that at all?
Oh, yeah, with Damian Lewis, right?
Yeah, Damian Lewis. And she was like, I just started classes at this place called the Groundlings. You should try it out. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, and I remember like researching it up, and like first thing that popped up was like Will Ferrell. And I was like, what? Like, there's no way I'll get in there. Like, you know, I'm taking theater classes at Cal State LA.
I'm picking a poop off the side.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And so I auditioned there. I got the guts up to audition there, and I passed the audition. And I went to sign up for classes, and I missed the registration for classes. Oof. I was so bummed, dude. I was so bummed out. But that same day, I signed up for classes at UCB because I heard that place was just as great.
Yeah.
So I signed up for classes at UCB. 2 days later, I get a call from the Groundlings. There's an opening. So I was taking UCB and Groundlings classes at the same time. And needless to say, I was like, oh, this is my calling in life. This is what I want to do with the rest of my life, is be a big goofball that's making stuff up for a living. How much fun is that? And so from then on, I didn't go back to Cal State. And I just focused everything on improv. Like, I was making money to do improv classes and to perform sketch comedy. And that's probably, when did we take that class together?
Oof, man.
2009, 2010?
Yeah, around that time.
So so I had just passed intermediate at Groundlings, and I was performing at Improv Olympic here in Los Angeles too, and still working that janitor job. And then I was coaching some lacrosse and doing some personal training, just whatever I could do, and then bopping around the valley. I moved from that Hollywood place to North Hollywood, and was popping around, and I just fell in love with it. And I was trying to perform every single weekend. And then I got my own YouTube channel, and I met some really good friends. I booked a commercial for this old show called the Championship Gaming Series. I don't know if you remember that or not. It was on the DirecTV channel when they had kind of an off channel. And I did this set of commercials with this YouTube guy, my buddy Corey Williams, Mr. Safety. And he was like, you should do YouTube videos. And so I started doing YouTube videos and got 20 or 30,000 subscribers, and was just doing YouTube videos every week. And again, just trying to get experience and trying to, write my own material and do characters and stuff like that. And that, again, it was all just kind of building this massive material and writing for myself and still performing all the time.
As you're doing this, and you're focusing on Groundlings and UCB, and they while all basically improv tenets are the same,
yes,
but there are certainly different focuses.
Yes.
And, you think UCB, everybody would think more game.
Yes.
Groundlings, more character.
Yes.
Maybe IO, more relationship-based.
Yeah.
So as you're going through and you're doing UCB and you're doing Groundlings, did you find yourself, clearly you ended up Groundlings, but did you find yourself just gravitating more towards that sort of focus?
From the very first class, I remember, and I didn't know anything about improv. I just thought it was the same thing, like being taught at different schools. You know what I mean? I didn't know anything about it. But I remembered doing my UCB class one day and being like, well, my Groundlings teacher told me this. And this one specific UCB teacher did not like the Groundlings, I'm assuming, because he told me, well, throw that out the door. That's not what we do here, and I don't want you to ever basically talk about it ever again. And so that pretty much made a clear-cut decision on what I was gonna pursue. Now, I've performed at UCB a bunch. I love it. I love the people there, and funny is funny to me. But that's kind of how the natural progression happened for me, and I just... For me, I grew up, my parents were always doing accents, and they were big and loud and boisterous, and so that kind of lent itself, to more of the Groundlings style. But I thought everything kind of translated really well over at IO. And even when I would do sketches at UCB, if it was funny, it worked,
Definitely.
And that's the way I feel, if funny is funny, and I don't think there should be beef between any of the schools out here. It's
not at all. But there are, and it's interesting that some people will definitely take personal stances against other theaters.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Come on, guys, we're all doing the same thing ultimately.
Yeah, and it was cool things. Like I got to do Montreal with a bunch of really cool people from Chicago and UCB in New York and IO, and all these different places. And you're just like, man, if it's funny, it works. Who cares where you come from? And I got a bunch of buddies that do stand up too, and it's I just have such a respect for all the schools and all the styles, and I don't think there should be any kind of, anything between them. But I got to kind of experience it right off the bat, and especially someone who's cheery-eyed, from Virginia,
hey, we all love each other here, right?
Right? Isn't this great?
Oh, we don't.
No. And which why do you have muscles? That's weird. You know what I mean? As coming from Division I lacrosse guy to be I want to do comedy. It's well, you don't see a lot of them,
right,
in the comedy world. And so
so for you, because I mean, we're talking about Groundlings like anybody could just hop in and just all of a sudden become a Groundling. It is an incredibly challenging process. I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
There are so many talented people that do not get an opportunity. One, to even make the Sunday company, but then two, even to make the main company.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's crazy.
To be able to go through all that and end on the main company, I mean, how did that whole feel? When you finally get through advanced, you get on the Sunday company, you know, your time on the Sunday company is done, and they say, hey, Tony, we want to bring you up to the main company. What's that experience like?
I mean, I put a lot of work in, dude. And I mean, there's no real formula to it. You know, so I auditioned in the summer of 2007, and then I got into the main company, I think the spring of 2012, I think, or it might have been 2013. So it took me about 5.5 years, and that's rapid fire through the program. You know, and there's you just audition. You either get put in a one level or another level, and then, you know, the next two levels, basic and intermediate. You get 3 shots at each. You know, and then there's writer's lab, you only get 1 shot, and then advanced writer's lab, you only get 1 shot, and then you get Sunday company where you only get 1 shot, and they evaluate you, you know, up to 3 times if you pass all those 3 times. You know, so obviously the heat is on, but again, like, there was something to my, you know, discipline that I learned from Taekwondo and sports and military school that said, you know, if I work hard enough at this thing and I watch shows and I write and I do this stuff, like, at least there's a schedule there. Like, there is a system there. Like, if you do this and you do this and you do this and you do this and you do what makes you really laugh, like, you're gonna do well. And I remember my first class there, my teacher going, you have a style that is very Groundlings-esque. And I didn't know what that meant, you know what I mean? But for me, it was like, well, I'm never afraid to go 100% and be this kind of a character, or to try and imitate a character, or be like the brother of a character in a scene. Like, you know, I never had a fear to go for it in an improv scene. And I think that's, you know, obviously that's a rule across the board, but especially when you're doing characters, I think you have to be kind of fearless. And so, you know, for me, it's always, you know, I met my wife in the Sunday company,
Yes.
Which was very sweet, but it was also very bittersweet because she got cut from Sunday company, and I had a whole other 6 months left to go in my senior 6 months in the Sunday company, you know, with living with my, you know, now wife at that time, who had spent 6 years trying to get into the junior company. You know, that had been her dream. But the great thing is, you know, she wrote a script and got signed by CAA, and the Fairley brothers saw it and loved it. So, I mean, there's, you know, it's, you know, there's all kinds of paths that you can do. You know, you can work your butt off the same way at UCB to get on the main stage, to get on a Herald team there, or a mod team there.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same way with Second City or IO. But, you know, the Groundlings is known especially for being, you know, really cutthroat. And, you know, for me, it has always just been a good microcosm and practice grounds for what you're going to face when you get out there in Hollywood, man. You know, because you are going to get cut. You are going to have to audition. There are hard yeses and hard nos. And, you know, that's the tough thing about that place, is that there's going to be times where it's like, sorry, this place isn't for you. And it's like, you know, when you audition for a part, it's not like, you know what, come back in 6 months and take this, do the same, give me the same audition, and then maybe we'll rethink it, you know? So I think, you know, it's given me everything I have. You know, SNL scouted me there, and I got to audition for them through that, and that's what got me the big manager and the big agent, you know? So it is a amazing platform, amazing friendships there. You know, for me, it was like getting my master's degree in comedy.
Sure. Yeah, because I mean, just the writing process alone is just so arduous. I mean, you are just being forged under fire in that situation.
And that Sunday company, man, you're putting up a whole new show, and I was putting up 8 to 10 bits a week. You know, I like to use this shotgun effect when I'm pitching sketches, and that's just like, pitch until I find something that works. But I'm just going to write and write and write and write until I find what works for me. And thank God I did that, you know, but I I would write like a wild man until I found what worked. And I feel like I was kind of floating in on a like bravado until I really found out, oh, like physical comedy. Like I love Chris Farley. Like I need to bring that to the table. And then, you know, I feel like that's kind of been my niche, you know, ever since. Has been, you know, doing a lot of physical comedy is my main deal, you know, and these big.
Because I feel like the hardest thing for anybody that's one, you know, aspiring comedian, writer, whatever, in that sense is there's so many. You are a fan of so many people growing up and learning to filter what they've taught you or what you've learned from them, and then finding your own unique voice that is kind of can stand separate from that,
distinct. Yeah. And for me, you know, it took me a while to find that. I think, you know. And, you know, because I love Farley, I love Jack Black, I love Belushi, you know. I grew up watching those guys, and that, I love that kind of big energy, you know. And so for me, it was kind of like finding my own way of expressing that, you know what I mean? And like when I got to do Montreal, the Just for Laughs Festival, it was, you know, my showcase. You've got like 5 minutes to do your very best work. And, you know, mine was like a few impressions narrated by Werner Herzog, but like the majority of it was like, the last 3 minutes was just this big physical bit of a guy auditioning for an upper level movement class at Juilliard. And as you mentioned before, I'm just in tights.
Yes.
And
what do you love so much about the tights when that does for your physical performance? You just love that look or the feel?
I think there's something... I mean, obviously, there's something hilarious about a man in tights. And, you know, it's not, I don't think it's a secret out there that there's something very funny about that. And then again, like to kind of bring it back, there's not a lot of guys that have the athletic background that I do that do comedy, you know? And so for me, it's like, I think that's a distinct look. And it's so funny. I saw a guy in a Groundlings show recently in a class. And I wrote him a really a nice note. He had done a great job, so I wrote him a congratulatory note. And I got an email back from him, and he said, "Man, I saw you like 3 years ago do this improv with my old improv group, Robert Downey Jr. Jr." And he was like, I remember being like, "Man, that buff guy was really funny." And then I saw you at the Groundlings, and I was like, "Oh man, there's that buff guy again." You know what I mean? And so for me, it was always kind of like, oh, it's something, you know, that kind of set me apart, you know, from other people. And I don't think it wasn't like a natural thought of like, oh, I'm going to wear, you know, spandex in this. I think it started off when I was doing those shows at I.O. I had done a sketch as like a pro wrestler who was doing a campaign for shingles. And he was like in a wheelchair and kept trying to get up, and they told him that he couldn't, you know, he can't get up or whatever. And, you know, from there on out, I was like, oh man, this could work. This could work for me, man.
And for the Groundlings, because part of it, once you do make the main company, is that part of that responsibility is that you're watching other people coming up through Advance and setting a company and giving your thoughts and opinions on that. What is it like being on the other side of that?
You know, it's really interesting, man. I try and be as supportive as possible because I remember, you lose a lot of friends along the way, man, you know, that get cut or this or that, you know, whatever happens along the way. And, you know, I try and, you know, be as open-minded and you know, and laughable as possible, you know, and really try. I love unique points of views, and I think that's what I'm always looking for, you know, and I think that's what I'm always trying to do, you know. So for me, it's no matter what level you are there, it takes guts to take those classes, man. And it takes hard work, especially once you start getting up to those upper levels where you're writing your own material. But that's why, you know, that's why we get jobs. Because people hire you because, you know what you can do that's funny, and you can write for yourself. So, you know, we're not just dealing with an actor that's read the lines and can read the lines that are on the script, but, you know, people that have analyzed scripts and they write their own, and they've been doing this for years, and they're battle tested. You know?
For sure. I mean, you're generating that much material that quickly.
Exactly.
Man.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fantastic. I mean, definitely when you say it's like getting a master's, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that was how the whole School of Rock thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little about School of Rock.
Yeah, dude.
So you do the does it go where you do the SNL showcase, you get the big manager, the big agent, and then all of a sudden School of Rock presents itself? So, dude, I tested. That's so funny. I'm writing a blog for my wife right now all about this. She wanted me to do a pilot season blog. She's got an awesome blog, guys.
heelsinthehills.com. Check it out. A little shameless plug. And so I auditioned for SNL and didn't get the part, but fingers crossed that they'll call me. This was only about 4 years ago. But then I get back and my brand new shiny agents and managers are just like, don't worry about it, dude. You've got pilot season coming up. And I don't think I had auditioned for a single TV credit going into my first pilot season. And it was so brutal.
Really?
Brutal, dude. I mean, I had never had to memorize 9 pages in a 24-hour period. I didn't like to memorize. I couldn't stand it. I didn't know the tricks of the trade. I didn't, you know what I mean? I had done my stuff at Groundlings, but most of that stuff I had written for myself, so I knew it like the back of my hand. So once I got into that pilot season, it was just like, oh no, and I'm like forgetting lines and I'm showing up nervous. And as soon as you walk into a room nervous, it's like, I mean, you know, ooh, might as well not be there at all. And I think I went on 22 pilot auditions, and I don't think I got a single callback my first pilot season. Oof. It was awful. But when you're coming off of a test from testing for SNL, everybody wants to see you and everybody wants to audition you. And so I thought my career was over, dude. And then so that was an awful first pilot season.
Do you feel at least by the end of it, by audition 22, that you were like, I'm starting to get the hang of this, or you're still like, oh man, what am I doing?
I mean, I was working with a coach. I was doing all kinds of stuff. And I just felt like so stuck. Like, I'm not bringing myself to this. I'm being so nervous. Like, I couldn't get a grasp on it, you know? And I think I booked my first TV job that year. It was on a Disney show. And that was really fun. And I might have had one other little booking that year, TV-wise. And then I was back in it for the next pilot season. And same thing, dude. Same thing. I remember I had gotten a call back on one audition, and I went in for producers, and one of the writers knew me from the Groundlings and was like, this guy is so funny. And so instead of it having that effect of like, oh, I've got a fan in the room, it was like, now I have to be funny. I have to be funny or else. And it was the same deal, dude. I think I got 2 or 3 producer sessions, and I think I went on 21 pilot auditions that year, and nothing. But then the following year, I got this recurring role on Heart of Dixie as an effeminate husband who everybody thought was gay in the town. And I was doing a character at the time in Sunday Company called Private Dufay, who was based off, he had this voice like this, and he was like a savior for the Confederates. And he was this Southern effeminate Confederate general, right, who was praised by the rest of the guys in his regiment as being this ruthless killer. And I think the casting director from Heart of Dixie had seen me do that character and brought me in. And I got that part, and I loved working at Heart of Dixie. I got to make a bunch of friends, and I got to be funny and all my fun lines. It was a really fun thing. And then I think I booked Modern Family that same year, and I started to be like, okay, maybe I can do this. I think I got a big commercial that year too, and started to build up some confidence. And then at that same time, Nickelodeon had come and seen me in the main show because they have a fellowship. They're one of the sponsors of the theater, and they have team classes and workshops they do during the summer in direct correlation. And someone had seen me there and wanted me to come in and pitch some ideas to Nickelodeon for their original ideas department. They were starting a new live action web division. And so I pitched them a bunch of ideas for shows, and they didn't buy any of them, but they bought this other guy's idea, and they had a part in there that they really liked for me. So I went and auditioned, and it was $300 for the day on a Sunday. But I had a blast, man. We shot this thing, and I was on their radar. And so this was in March, and then in May I got an audition for a Nickelodeon movie called Splitting Atom, and I went in, and it was later 40s magician uncle, and I was like, I'm never gonna get this. So I went in and I just had fun. I was like, I don't think I really know the lines, guys. I'm just gonna have fun. And they were like, okay, cool. And I goofed around. It was a maniac magician. And a month goes by, and I get the call, and they're like, we're going to need you for 7 weeks to shoot this Nickelodeon movie in Vancouver.
That's awesome.
And it was crazy, man. And that was in the summer, early summer. Oh, I guess there had been a pilot season before that. Right before that summer, I had my third pilot season, and I had decided to grow my hair out. And Heart of Dixie hated it because I was supposed to look like a Ken doll. And I was like, I really want to grow my hair out. And so I grew my hair out, and I tested for 2 pilots that year, for like leads of 2 pilots. And like I kind of had this confidence I'd never had before to kind of just go in and be a goofy idiot. And I think the long hair, along with the confidence, like all of a sudden started opening doors. And then I got this Nickelodeon movie, and I get home from the Nickelodeon movie, and 2 months later, I see a breakdown on Deadline, School of Rock to become a Nickelodeon and Paramount television show. And I remember like 15 minutes after that came out, I had taken a screen grab of it, and I had sent it to my manager, and I said, I have to go in for this. And like 2 months go by, and I got to go in for like the first round of auditions.
That is so cool, where you get a chance where you can see something and go like, I want this.
And sure enough, like the director of the Nickelodeon movie had emailed me and said, and with that same like attachment from the Deadline article, and he was like, if you don't get this, there's something wrong in the world. I've already emailed everyone I know at Nickelodeon to tell them that you should get this part.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was so sweet, man. And so I auditioned for the role, and I was like, I love Jack Black, dude. And I know we haven't talked about him very much, but like Jack Black and Chris Farley, like I fell in love with Jack Black when I first saw him in Airborne, in like 1993, right? And then like all of a sudden I remember in college, like watching Orange County over and over and over again, and then Nacho Libre over and over, and then School of Rock, and being like, oh my gosh, this guy's my idol. And as he grew in fame, my more and more of my buddies are like, man, you remind us of that guy Jack Black. You sound just like him. And your comedy is very similar. And so I've always kind of gotten that in my, trudging through the ranks. These similarities to Jack. And I'm such a huge fan of his. And that's why as soon as that breakdown came out, I was like, oh my gosh, to get to play this iconic role of this guy that is like one of my comedic heroes, So I went in an audition, didn't hear anything, but I knew like I was running into other comedian buddies that were all going out for School of Rock, and I think they saw like 1,500 people or something. I mean, it was crazy.
Now, when you're seeing your other comedian buddies, are you like, man, I could see them doing that? Or you feel like,
of course.
I feel like, I'm the only one. I know this is right at my wheelhouse.
Dude, see, I felt that. I was like, this is my wheelhouse. This is my part. But you're in this business enough to feel that way and know that it doesn't happen like that a lot of the times. 99% of the time, it doesn't happen like that. You'll feel that way about a part and it doesn't go your way, Like I really felt like Saturday Night Live was my dream, and I didn't understand why my dream wasn't coming to fruition. I was like, I felt great about my audition. I felt, you know what I mean? But the thing is that it's nice to have that kind of out of the way now.
Yeah.
There is something, and I think I learned this over these periods of auditioning and pilot seasons and everything else, of like, you've got to really bring a comfortable you to that audition, because that's the only thing that's going to get you apart, because people want to be around you. People want a nice person, which is like my number one rule to anyone that asks me for advice. It's like, just be a nice person, and then do what you think is funny, be you, and be comfortable. Be someone that people want to be around.
I think that's the hardest thing, is for people to learn to be comfortable doing that, because they have so many thoughts about like, I got to play what they expect me to do, or I got to play into this, rather than like, if I'm just myself, they're going to enjoy that so much more than me trying to be something that they want.
And I've worked with a couple guys. I've worked with Stan Kirsch, who's amazing acting coach, and then another guy, Jack Plotnick, that you might know. He's an amazing actor and coach. And, more than anything, it's like, and I'm going to do my best to memorize these lines. And this is kind of how I really got set free. It was like, I'm going to do my best to memorize these lines, and I'm going to work on them for an hour, 2 hours, whatever I need to do. But once I get in that room, I've got to trust that I know these lines, and that I'm not going to let it kill my audition if I fumble a line. I'm going to go from the next natural place that I'm in. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And with School of Rock, it was just kind of like, again, like that magician audition where it was like a free-for-all. And I'm just going to be a total goof because I am this guy. You know what I mean? Like Dewey Finn, like Jack Black is Dewey Finn. Like, I'm another version of Dewey Finn.
Now, as we're talking about that, because we're like, being your own self,
Yeah.
but that also having those comedic influences that
Yes.
you love as you're growing up.
Yes.
So when you're coming to do this role that Jack Black played,
Yeah.
you loved him in this role,
Yep.
and you're playing this role,
Yeah.
but a different version of it. Like,
Yes.
How do you feel like at times, because you've seen the movie so many times?
Yeah, so
do you
many times.
To me, like, all right, I gotta just still be true to me, even though it's going to be similar to Jack.
Yes.
But I got to make sure it's me, and that I'm not just playing a version of Jack.
Yeah, and for me, we've got amazing producers and writers on the show, Emmy Award winners, just the best guys. So I go out and I do what I do. Like we said, I do me. I'm not trying to be Jack, and skadoo shit all over the place. But, obviously I sound a lot like him, but I'm going to do my own thing. And, people are going to draw similarities, which I think is a great thing. Like, that's awesome for adults to be like, man, that guy reminds me of Jack, but he's not. And I think kids get to experience a new Dewey Finn, but also shades of what Jack is as well, But I think it's neat that I was able to, like, do the Two Broke Girls, the Modern Family, the New Girl, none of which were any kind of Jack Black, any remotely Jack Black, and then my whole SNL thing was very Farley-esque, in its entirety. And so, again, that's the neat thing about the Groundlings is you get to find out the array of different things you do. But this part in particular is like such a dream come true, man.
Well, if you get a chance to check out Tony's Twitter, there is a GIF of him where he's pushing a kid out the window, and I can just watch that. I just enjoy that shove of that kid.
Right?
It's just great. I can just watch him shoving that kid out the window again and again and again.
And that's the thing. These guys, these writers, one of which is an old school Groundling and an Emmy Award winner, like they know how to write for me. And the great thing about it is it's like they're writing for Jack from the movie, but they know that I love the physical stuff, maybe even a little more, and that, I'm not afraid to go for it, so sometimes I'll even do stuff and they'll be like, okay, we need to reel it in just a tiny bit, for me, that's amazing.
So much better to be in that position than like, can you please give us some
just
more?
More,
No, we need more than that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Your more is not what the more that we need. We need more than that.
Yeah, it's like I did this part on Ben and Kate, and it was a little tiny part, this old show with Nat Faxon. And I remember, like, whoever the director was or writer was, they were like, your eyes seem really crazy. Could you just do, like, less eyes? And I'm like, yeah. Less eyes, like not even knowing that I'm like doing crazy eyes. And so I love to see it sometimes with like School of Rock, I'll like totally have like crazy eyes going on. And they're like, oh, that's fine. Because this guy, Dewey Finn, he's so passionate. Like you can tell, dude, like that's the way I am with improv and sketch comedy and in real life. I'm just like this manic, wild passion dude, who just... And, working with the kids is so great, man. And, like I said, I was like a lacrosse coach for a while. So for me, it's like so much fun to like be a leader on the field, lead by example stuff,
Now, as we're getting to wrap up, I want to touch on one thing real quick, because I did mention at the beginning, quadruple threat. We've talked about the writing, we talked about the acting, we talked about the comedy, but we didn't talk really quickly about the producing.
Yes.
You're producing An American in Texas.
Yes.
Yeah, also starring in it as well, but producer. So what was it about this that made you want to be a producer on this?
My buddy Anthony's the executive producer, and I worked on a film with him a while ago called Round Ball, and he's known I've always really kind of wanted to get my hand in the production game, because like one of the very first things I did was a show called G Block, and Parvez Chino was in it, and I wrote that with my buddy Stuart and helped him produce that. And when I was doing the YouTube thing, I was producing everything myself. And anybody knows that in this town, if you really want to have longevity, you got to produce, you got to write, you got to direct, you got to have a bunch of different things going on, because I'm not Brad Pitt, man. I'm not going to be, but even he's a producer, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But, I don't have a Tom Cruise face, and that's okay, and I accept it. Maybe some of my fans out there think I do, but, and Anthony was so great, and I was like, hey, man, I think I could help bring in some talent. I think I could help do this or do that. And he was like, I'd love it, dude. Totally want you as a producer on the film. And, my wife and I, we write a bunch of scripts together. We have dreams of having our own production company one day. So for me, that's kind of, I'm hoping to get to direct an episode of School of Rock, if we get a season 2. So for me, that's kind of, again, it's that Groundlings training of like, you got to do it all. You got to go get your own costumes and your props and write your own material. And, and so it's like, well, why can't I utilize that in all facets? Will Ferrell's got a production company. Melissa McCarthy and Ben Falcone have a production. Will Forte, all these guys from the Groundlings, Pee Wee Herman writes all his own stuff. Elvira writes all her own stuff. These people, they go out and, there's a lot of Groundlings people too that are writers and producers. Like I said, one of the EPs from our show is Emmy award-winning producer Groundling guys. So,
Yeah, that is such a great learning ground. And you learn so much.
Yeah,
you can do anything. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Tony, the time is race by. Tony,
I can't believe we're done, dude.
We're almost, we're wrapping up, but
I feel like I talked way too much.
No. There's no such thing as ever too much Tony Cavalero talk. Please.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yes, but if they want to continue following you around on the interwebs, where can they find you?
Everything, dude. When you're on a kid's show, you got to have everything. So Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook,
Periscope,
Vine, not Periscope yet.
Come on, you need everything.
I got to get on it. Okay. But all of those are just at Tony Cavalero. So
look at that.
It's easy breezy, and I've got a YouTube channel too. So I've got the whole 9, guys. So
look at this. As I said, a quadruple threat. Look at that. What? Man, how can you not love this guy? So make sure you check out School of Rock on Nickelodeon. Right there, lovely and talented. Handsome as can be. Tony Cavalero, everybody. Whee! I'm Frank Moran. You can follow me on Twitter at HappyGoJackie. I'll see you next time here on Spotlight On here on AfterBuzz TV. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.